Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Best Words. This week, we're going to discuss the ongoing student loan crisis in America. Just the other day, the Biden administration extended the pause on student loan payments into January 2022, the midterm election year. The politics of this seem borderline suicidal, and it's also not exactly a tough love policy that's easy to justify.
Yeah, Biden, he promised a lot on the campaign trail when it came to student loans. I believe at some point he actually talked about up to $50,000 worth of forgiveness, or even $10,000, depending on your situation. And I know that already he's done it for some of the colleges that were deemed fraudulent. Um, I can't remember the exact number, but so far he's kind of been punting this football and kicking the can down the road, so to speak, on the student loan crisis that we are suffering through right now.
Yeah, well, the main student loan servicer, Navient, is based in Wilmington, Delaware, and it's a publicly traded company, which means there's people making millions of dollars off of basically all of our suffering, and they are probably two phone calls away from Joe Biden personally. Um, the student loans, if let's take a step back. So, okay, in America, the government will give you some money for you to go to school, and you just got to pay it back. Sound like so far so good. That's not a terrible policy, right? It's good that we have these loans. We should have cheaper public universities like we used to, but okay, the existence of student loans isn't a problem. I'm fine with the government loaning people money. What I'm not fine with primarily at this point in time is what they've done with interest rates. The interest rates on my student loans are approximately 7%. I have a bit of grad school under my belt. I owe quite a bit of money. Every single month, I'm paying mostly interest, and I'm not alone. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who pay 80% of their monthly bill is simply interest payments. You're never ever getting ahead. I finished grad school in 2008, walked into the buzzsaw of that, worldwide economic crash. The interest got started being added onto the principal, and now I owe a ton of money I'm never going to pay off, unless I win the lottery or fake my own death and move to Paraguay. But really, it's a manageable amount of money if they didn't capitalize a bunch of interest every time I took a deferment. Now, the average interest on a home loan is about 3%. Uh, the average interest on an auto loan, somewhere down there. The average interest on student loans is halfway between a home equity loan and a payday lender. I mean, you're practically dealing with mafia level interest rates here. It's obscene.
Yeah, you'd
Banks
probably be
like
better off with
JP,
a loan shark.
you'd be, you'd be better off with a loan shark, right? I'd rather my knees get broken than my wages get garnished. JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs borrow from the federal government at a few basis points, right? Less than 1%. I think student loan interest, if it needs to have an interest rate, and let's just say they want to cover the administrative costs, hedge against inflation a little bit, make it a few basis points. Hell, make it 1%. But 7% is a crime. Why are people trapped in these abusive loans when the ultimate creditor is the federal government itself? Why is the federal government in business of collecting interest from an entire generation of Americans? It's a policy crime, but it's also a self-inflicted wound. You have an entire generation of people who don't do things like why they bemoan the fact that young people aren't having children, young people aren't buying homes. It's like, why do you think that is? And then when they do these attempts to say ameliorate the debt, they say, well, no grad school, right? No doctors, no lawyers. I know doctors with $400,000 worth of debt. Yes, doctors make a good living, but that's a huge chunk of money that's again accumulating 7% interest every year. So if you're a doctor with $300,000 in student loans, you're paying 21 grand a year just in interest servicing. Is that how we want to treat our doctors in America? No, I don't think so. So the whole system is designed so some well-connected middleman can get rich, monetizing and securitizing our student loans. And that's the crime. That's the crime that needs to be undone. So why should we forgive student loans? Well, look, debt jubilees have a long history in society. They go back to ancient Mesopotamia, we have records of debt jubilees, right? So somebody comes along, the situation gets untenable, and we say we're going to wipe the slate clean. We're going to try and make the creditors as whole as we can without further punishing the people who are in this debt cycle. I think erasing the current student loans on the books, one is within Joe Biden's purview of power. He is choosing not to do it. I think that's very important. I think it's important for Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer and everyone else who's on our side of this fight to keep pointing that out. Biden has the power to do this. He has the statutory authority. So debt jubilees. Why should you do this? Well, to right a historical wrong, right? It was never okay that these interest rates were so high. We need to fix that. And one way to fix that is to wipe out the student debt and then change the interest to close to zero going forward. It's also just good policy. I mean, just think about the Republican Party and tax cuts, right? How do they justify tax cuts? Yes, we're going to be giving rich assholes more money, but it's going to be good for the economy as a whole. In this case, of course, it's a lie. Tax cuts are never good for the economy as a whole. It's been proven again and again and again. But student loan forgiveness is a form of middle class tax cut that would actually juice the economy. It would take an entire generation that's not having children and not buying homes and give them the opportunity to do that. One last angle I want to talk about is the racial component. Who has the most student debt? Well, it's black and brown borrowers, right? Like getting rid of student debt would be a huge racial justice issue as well. It would do a lot of good for the minority community. So, and there's this resistance from not only the Republicans, but a certain type of Democrat. They say, well, look, I don't want kids who go to Harvard, rich kids who go to Harvard, to get their their debts forgiven. It's like, okay, listen, do you think Jared Kushner has student debts? Of course not. You know who has student debts from elite schools? Middle class kids who busted their ass to get into elite schools. The people whose grandfather has a building named after them on Harvard campus, they don't have student debt. So Joe Biden using this really just, red herring excuse of we don't want to give the rich anything they don't deserve is really pretty transparently weak, especially since this government, that brand of Democrat and all the Republicans love giving rich people stuff they don't deserve. It's kind of what they do.
Yeah, right. That's their job when it comes to most other things. So I don't know what the dynamic is with this, particularly that they don't want to get rid of student loans. But there's a lot of angles on, or a lot of reasons why student loans are the way they are. I think something that you didn't even talk about was the right wing, and even a lot of Democrats, the neoliberals, like this kind of idea of a hierarchy where, if I'm being honest, they don't even think poor people and middle class people should be able to go to school. They talk about things like access a lot of times. So you should have access to college. You should have access to health care. And what they really mean is we don't really give a shit how much it costs you. If you can't afford it, it doesn't matter. You have access to it. Guys, come on. I think that a lot of them really want to return to those days where it's really rich people are the only people that could go to school. And this is just one of the ways of forcing, poorer people and middle class people who don't have the means, kind of just, without saying the dirty words and the stuff you don't want to hear. It's just kind of a way to keep you out. You know what I mean? But yeah, so I'm in a bit of a different situation from you. So I only have a bachelor's degree, and I wound up paying off my student debt. I got pretty lucky because I went to a state university, and it, isn't nearly as expensive as private universities. So when you're a kid, I don't know, we're a little bit different in the age respectively. When I was a kid, I was told
not that different. But.
Okay, we're close. I'm over exaggerating here, but I'm saying when I was a kid and I'm going to school, I didn't really know what I was getting into when they were like, just take these loans out. Go to school. Everybody has to go to school. Bachelor's degree will definitely give you more money. And it's true that people with bachelor's degrees do overall make more money. The difference between a high school diploma and a bachelor's degree is pretty wide, but it's not a guarantee. And then in your case, a master's degree actually, on average, doesn't boost you up too much more than a bachelor's degree from what I've seen in studies done. And then you're also spending a lot more money to get that master's degree, which a lot of jobs are requiring because bachelors are becoming so ubiquitous, and almost everybody has one in the job market nowadays.
Yeah, it's the credential treadmill, right? It used to be you needed a high school diploma, a college degree, you stood out. That was 40 years ago. Now everyone has a college degree, so you need a master's to stand out. And it's wrong. The other thing is, I want to talk about the social contract, right? Like you made a great point. We tell kids every day of their lives for 18 years, if you don't go to college, you're not going to succeed. You have to go to college. We take these young impressionable minds and drill it into their head every single day of their existence. The single most important thing they can do for their future is go to college, go to the best college.
That's the situation that I was in, for sure.
And then we make it so when they do that, they carry a huge debt in adulthood, basically a mortgage, right? You're carrying an
Hmm.
education mortgage. Instead of a
And
house, though, you have a
you can't
diploma.
you
And you,
can't you can't get rid of it through bankruptcy either. So you're screwed four ways from one.
yeah, and so from a social trust perspective, I mean, we misled an entire generation of children, intentionally or not. They were lied to. So the social contract was broken. And just from an economics perspective, right? It's good economics to get rid of these student loans. I mean, who is benefiting from this that is going to have their books wiped clean? Well, it's the government. It's a fictional, it's a fictional line item in the government's ledger. Like it's not going to cost anybody. That it's not some small town bank that's going to get wiped out if you don't pay them back. Um, so
Yeah,
there's
it's
really not a lot
Navient.
of it's an hobby and some evil company, I'm sure, is. I mean, the fact that our student loans are serviced by a handful of publicly traded companies is infuriating, right? It's really kind of a parallel to the health insurance companies, and here's what I mean by that. When you have a company with a fiduciary duty to make as much money as possible, handling something that should be a public good, it's a recipe for disaster. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if the Democrats are really stupid enough to reinstate student loans in January of 2022 before what I'm sure they're going to tell us is the most important midterms of our lives. And until we beat this looming fascist threat, every election is going to be the most important election of our lives
Yeah.
until, again, COVID kills off the MAGA movement in big enough numbers. But if it really is so important, are you really going to saddle people with this debt without? Okay, I think the debt should be wiped out. I do. I think right now the easiest, best thing to do is just get rid of student debt and make the interest next to zero going forward. But okay, say you're Joe Biden and you're of this old school and you're just not willing to do that. You cannot reinstate the status quo. The status quo was broken. It was a ticking time bomb full of generational resentment. And if they don't do anything about that, well, that's just stupid and it's going to create a giant self inflicted wound. And one last thing about the looming fascist movement, would I put it past them to start running on student loan forgiveness as an electoral ploy?
Oh
No, I wouldn't.
yeah. Oh, they would. They'll run to the left if it's necessary to beat the Democrats. It happens when Trump ran the first time. He was running to the left on a lot of things. He was talking about things like Medicare for all. Like, why can't we have that? I mean,
Yeah.
their playbook is changing a little bit since Trump came onto the picture, but the Democrats are getting outplayed pretty much just on every angle. Um, it would be incredibly
Yes.
stupid. It would be incredibly stupid to reinstate it in January. Just 8 months before they're having an election that is just as con- consequential as the 2020 presidential one was. They're just as important. If, say, we lose the House, say goodbye to any progress that Biden thought he was ever going to have, which hasn't been much, to be honest with you, in the last year.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a whole other. I'm lukewarm. Some days I think Biden's one of those paintings where like once you see like either the old lady or the young girl with the umbrella. Sometimes I'm like, okay, you know what? He's actually doing surprisingly well, and I misjudged him. And then sometimes I'm like, no, the guy's not the right fit for the job. But we will have plenty of time to get into that in future episodes. For now, He better eliminate student loans or risk losing the midterms in 2022 and pissing me off personally.
And coming from somebody who's paid off his student loans, I think they should get rid of it too. I don't even care. It's total bullshit that it even exists. One last point. When you wipe these student loans out, like I know you're going to, Joe Biden, huh? We need to do something about why school costs so much in the first place. We need to do something about talking to the public about how trade school is fine. It's okay if you don't want to go to college. But if you're going to go to a state school, you want to better yourself, you want to get a degree, you want to go get a job that's going to, make your life better for your family. There's no problem with that. There's also no problem with being a plumber. There's no problem with being an electrician. People on the left don't look down upon those who don't go to college and just want to start working for a living out of high school. I've never had a problem with that. I've never met anybody on the left that's had a problem with that, and I think that's a talking point that needs to die from the Republicans. So thank you.